Welcome to the Athletic FC podcast with me, Akinwolere. At Old Trafford, all the talk pre-match was about the new strikers on show, but it was, in the end, a set piece that made the difference. So, is it same old Arsenal, or can they evolve under Mikel Arteta? Here with us today for this one, we've got Crafton. We've also got Adrian Clarke as well. Later on, we'll hear from the Athletics' James McNicholas, who was at Old Trafford for Sunday's game. Right, Adrian, talk to me, because some of the numbers aren't that great for Arsenal in particular. Only had 38% possession, losing the shot count 22-9, and only having an open play XG of 0.29. I guess they got the result, but it probably wasn't the best viewing for Arsenal fans, was it?
It was a tough watch. I was on co-commentary for Arsenal and it was difficult. It really was to watch it because there were lots and lots of uncomfortable moments, plenty of frustrating ones as well. Those numbers do tell a story. I think it's a fair reflection of the game. I don't think Arsenal will be worried about the possession stats at all. I think there is an intention to become more of a transitional team this year, to be a bit more punchy on the counter because of Viktor Gyökeres up front. And if you look back at the game, so often Arsenal did play through Manchester United on the break, getting Odegaard into good positions. And it was then that it fell down, just the runs and the choice of pass were poor. So I take some positives from the performance, even though the attacking numbers were pretty dreadful. I do think that once Arsenal sharpen up, they will become quite a very decent counter-attacking side. But no, look, Manchester United probably deserved to win the game. This was certainly the best they've played against Arsenal for some time. And I'd probably say this was one of Arsenal's weakest performances in the last 2 seasons, at least.
What do you think? Do you think Arsenal were lucky to get that goal? Should United feel sore that they didn't walk away with a result there?
I didn't think there was anything wrong with the goal. You mean from the corner?
Yeah.
No, I can't really believe that was even like a discussion, that this goal could be disallowed. I just thought it was weak goalkeeping. Arsenal set up more. I thought they were more organised and aggressive at the set piece than Manchester United were, and that's why they managed to get a goal out of it. But I think if your team was getting a goal taken away for that, then you'd be absolutely furious. In a way, whereas you probably have to watch 15 replays to find something that you think was maybe wrong to rule the goal out, which don't get me wrong, we've seen that before with VAR, where it feels like they're looking to find a way to rule goals out. But no, I really don't think that's the kind of goal that should be taken away. Manchester United were a lot better. I also thought, actually, in this fixture last season, Arsenal weren't very good. I think it ended up as a draw, but I don't think it was a crazily different game, actually, this time around. It just feels very different because, there's new signings on the pitch, and Manchester United have had this pre-season where they've won a couple of games, etc. So there's this kind of optimism around it. Arsenal are never very good at Old Trafford. I mean, it's really hard to remember a game where Arsenal turn up at Old Trafford and play with real authority and confidence. They always look a little bit inferior in some ways. So I think from Arsenal's perspective, they'll just be glad to get out of there with 3 points. I think from Manchester United's perspective, it kind of solidifies their two key problems, which is they've not been good enough in both penalty boxes for a very long time. So the goalkeeper situation is one that continues. And I think they hope that Mbeumo Sesko and Cunha over time will pick up on the other side.
Yeah, just going back to the goal very quickly, Bayern letting a goal straight from a corner last season, didn't he, at Spurs? I think it was Son Heung-min who scored. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Declan Rice whipped that ball in underneath his crossbar. I think that would have been referenced in the build-up to the game. So, it's smart play in the end. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was a new corner routine from Arsenal with those 5 players on the edge of the box, with 2 of them sort of charging in at the last moment to cause a little bit of a distraction. And not saying it did cause that big a distraction, but Calafiori popped up at the far post to score, didn't he? So no, nothing wrong with that goal, but lots of room for improvement for Arsenal, I think.
Is this the kind of luck that Arsenal might need, Adrian, moving forward? Because I was listening to you on Handbrake Off, and last season there were definitely moments where a lot of Arsenal fans might have felt hard done by either referee decisions or unlucky decisions that might have gone their way. If you're going to win the league, you might need some of this to go your way, right? Surely.
100%. Yeah, I was asked on Handbrake Off what my wish was for the season. I just said more luck. So, I mean, hopefully we've not used it all up in one game. But it was, I wouldn't say it was a lucky win, because United ultimately didn't create a big chance.
Yeah.
They didn't create a single big chance for all of the promise that they showed. And they did show promise with Mount as this sort of floating false nine, dragging Saliba or Gabriel out of position. Yeah, they did some good things, but ultimately the saves that Raya made, I think the Cunha save was a top one from the angle, but the other ones were relatively easy. So yeah, Manchester United have got to do a bit more to win games like that, haven't they?
Yeah, Amram was talking that Manchester United weren't boring, Adam. They didn't win, but I don't know. I felt that there were some improvements from last season. If anything, United just really looked up for it.
Yeah, but that's the bare minimum. It's the first game of the opening season. You've got Arsenal at home and you've just spent 200 million quid. You should, I mean, we're up for it, right? You should be up for it. And to be clear, I do think it is an improvement. I think in terms of the players, clearly have a greater understanding now of what the manager wants to do. He's clearly got players there that want to be there, and that again is, I would say, after we're now, where did he come in November? I think by this point there should be all those things happening. If there weren't all those things happening, you'd be really worried. So are Manchester United in a better place than they were in May, for sure, at least in terms of the performance yesterday? But I think almost in many ways, Arsenal at home on the opening day, there's no expectations really attached to that as a result. People are coming away from the game yesterday almost happy that they've seen a good performance. You saw like Manchester United players coming out saying how well they played, which I understand because the bar was so low from where they were. But
is that a signal of where Man United are right now, that you just want to see this team can play well?
Yeah, for sure, because they've not played well for 2 years. Even when they won games last season, they were really bad at times. So I don't think that should be sniffed at, or that United fans should be made to feel, in some way weak for being encouraged by that. That's the place Arsenal were 3 or 4 years ago, where what you wanted to see was a set of players who were working for each other, who had an idea of what the coach wanted to do. But in many ways, I almost want to see Manchester United more next week when they play Fulham away than Arsenal at home on the opening day, because Arsenal at home, it's like, if you win, fantastic. If you lose, no one's really going to have a go at you. Fulham away next week, all of a sudden is, well, if you lose that, then it's a really bad start to the season again. But if you win that, then it's a continuation of performances. So that's going to be the bigger test in some ways of their new mentality.
Yeah, I mean, Adrian, in the flip side, Fadam's talking about first games. City won, Liverpool won, Arsenal had to play on the Sunday. There are moments where I know those are the kind of games that Arsenal start to feel the pressure. Even though they didn't play that well, winning that game, surely, it is a really good start for them in the season.
Winning's all that matters. The performance ultimately gets forgotten, doesn't it? And in a way, if you play badly and make mistakes, yet still get 3 points, it's almost perfect, because you've got stuff to learn from, stuff to focus on moving forwards. I do think playing on the Sunday afternoon on the back of Liverpool and City scoring 4 apiece did add some pressure, I do. And I'm not saying that impacted the performance, but it definitely cranked it up a little bit. I just think Arsenal got a little bit flustered. For whatever reason, they didn't handle Manchester United's slightly increased hostility particularly well. Passing was poor. But yeah, look, got away with it. And ultimately you move on. You take the 3 points, you forget about that match really, and you look ahead to the next one. Leeds at home on Saturday.
Did you say at the start there, Arsenal had to play on a Sunday?
No, I didn't say it as a bad thing. I was just like, you're waiting to what you've watched your potential rivals win, and then you're playing on the Sunday evening, and you have to get a result. Come on.
Genuinely, Adrian, do you think on the opening weekend players are even thinking about what Liverpool are doing or what Man City are doing? You've been in this position.
Good point.
Obviously, we've not. Is that something you're even looking at on the opening weekend?
They would have watched the games, definitely. They would have watched it and thought, phew, City look good. Or Liverpool, phew, what about their attack? They'll obviously have been encouraged by how open they were. But no, they will have watched it. And obviously they've got those 3 points in the bag. And it's like you can't afford to drop too many points in a Premier League season. So because neither side dropped points, because both look pretty good, I just think I'm only talking small percentages, but like a little bit more pressure was added because they did well. So then it was like, can we do well? But it's a completely different type of match, isn't it? Like you say, and Arsenal have been annually terrible at Old Trafford. I don't know what it is about that place. Never ever bring our A game. Yeah. I think we've won 3 of the last 6 now at Old Trafford. So that's definitely a positive.
So much of Arsenal's summer has been dominated by their search for a new centre-forward. Having gone for Viktor Gyökeres, he lasted an hour on his debut. Adam, Adrian, I want to hear your thoughts in just a bit. But before that, here's James McNicholas, who was at Old Trafford for The Athletic, on Arsenal's new frontman.
What did I think of Viktor Gyökeres on his Premier League debut? Maybe a little bit underwhelming, I have to say. I think he made a decent start. But Mikel Arteta's point in his press conference after the game was simply that Arsenal didn't really play to Gyökeres' strengths. And I think this is going to be an ongoing discussion, really, over the next few months as Arsenal adapt to Gyökeres and he adapts to them. Arteta felt that, particularly in the first half, when the game was quite transitional, quite end-to-end, there were several moments where Arsenal had the opportunity to play someone through on goal, and they failed to execute. And that's certainly true. Arsenal were lacking fluency in attack. Their execution of the final ball wasn't good enough on the day. Had it been, perhaps we would have seen a bit more of Gyökeres. I think we've got to remember as well, he's still settling in. He's still getting up to speed. He joined Arsenal relatively late in the window. He hadn't had any sort of pre-season prior to that. So I think there's a bit of sharpness there missing too. But I think the main theme is this adaptation. And we've seen this before when Manchester City signed Erling Haaland and they had to make, changes and adjustments to be accustomed to playing with a conventional number 9. The difference between Havertz and Gyökeres is stark. Havertz wants to drop in, wants to get involved in the midfield. Gyökeres doesn't want to do that. He's playing on the shoulder. He's playing on the last line. And that requires something different from Arsenal. They didn't show it today. And I'm sure in the video sessions and coaching sessions that follow, that will be a big focus for Mikel Arteta in the coming days before their next outing.
Yeah, Adrian, talk to me. Viktor Gyökeres on his debut away at Manchester United. What do you think?
I felt a bit sorry for him, really. He's feeding off scraps, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. No service. I mean, look along Arsenal's forward line. Who did play well? Saka didn't play well. Martinelli didn't play well. Gyökeres, I wouldn't say he didn't play well. I just think he didn't really get much of a sniff. There's a couple of moments where he made good runs down the channels, sort of held it up nicely. There's one good cross, wasn't there, for Martinelli that he tried to overhead kick into the net. I think the telling moment, the bit we'll all remember, is when he makes that run down the left channel, which is kind of his domain, from an Ødegaard pass in the second half, and you think, right, here we go, we're rubbing our hands together, he's going to cut inside, and he's going to smash this in the top corner, and he trips over the ball. and that, unfortunately, is the moment that probably will linger in the minds of supporters. So, yeah, it was not the dream debut that he wanted. But I completely concur with James there. There were a couple of occasions. There was one Martinelli break down the middle. It was a relatively simple pass. Just slip it in behind, and he was there. He was in, and it didn't come. And there were one or two other little moments as well. So, yeah, they've just got to get on the same wavelength, haven't they, the attacking midfielders with Gyökeres, because he's a completely different type of striker.
Adam, 21 touches, 0 shots. I mean, it's not the greatest debut, but I don't think Arsenal were particularly at the races yesterday either.
No, and it's also not the easiest game to make your debut in. You're playing against 3 centre-halves and a team that's not really played with a conventional centre-forward for quite a long time now. And, I was even looking at the differences just in terms of just some very basic kind of possession differences between this fixture last season and this fixture this season. And I think Arsenal had 69% of the ball in the game in May, where it was 1-1, and yesterday it was about 38% that Arsenal had. Now that's partly because Arsenal scored early, and I think this is less about Gyökeres, and I think this is something about Arteta. And as Arsenal have this kind of increased desperation to win the league, where I think when they go 1-0 up away from home this season, and I think we saw a bit of it at times last season as well, because they know that they can't afford to drop points. I think they sometimes play with a bit of fear, or a bit of, we have to protect these points more than we have to go and win these points by scoring more goals. And I think that's a balance that Arteta is constantly, understandably wrestling with. The extent to which he can set this team free, and even the back four, where you've got like basically 4 centre backs, it feels like at times across that back four. It's a bit. I know Calafiori is like, he can play as a fullback, but I don't feel like that balance is conducive at times to really going after games. It's more about protecting games. But Adrian, you see a lot more of them. So is that a fair assessment?
I can see where you're coming from. Definitely, the game management side is a big deal, because Arsenal gave up so many points last season. What I'd actually say in this game was that Arsenal's fullbacks were pretty too bold. We saw at times Calafiori playing as number 10. And of course, if you lose the ball, or if in the case of one of the attacks, Ødegaard doesn't give it to Calafiori, gets intercepted, of course they go bang and pick out on Mbeumo. There was a couple of moments where White charges infield to go and support Saka, and he leaves Dorgu. Dorgu cheats over on the wing. Arsenal lose it. They go and give it to him. So in a way, Arsenal were a bit too cavalier at times in the game. But I do think there will be a focus on protecting leads this season. But the best way to protect it, in my view, is to look after the ball better. To go back to, if you're 1-0 up, have 70% of possession. That's the best time to do that, isn't it? And I just don't think Arsenal played well enough yesterday to get the control that they would have wanted. So yeah, it was just, honestly, I'd say it was a 4 or 5 out of 10 performance. It was really bad by Arsenal standards. Yet they win at Old Trafford. So honestly, it has to go down as a massive win. Actually, it has to go down as a brilliant win because of those circumstances.
Yeah, I want to talk about Arteta a little later on, Adam, because you just got me thinking about it. But let's just focus on strikers for now. Ekitike scored for Liverpool on his debut, brand new striker for Liverpool. João Pedro, Liam Delap obviously coming to Chelsea. Benjamin Šeško comes to Manchester United, and I guess Gyökeres for Arsenal. I want to focus on United and Arsenal for this time being. Gyökeres has been brought in to fix a lot of problems. Šeško has also been brought into Manchester United to, I guess, fix one of quite a few problems. How much of the success of both these teams rests on whether or not they can settle these strikers in?
I think it does. Well, I mean, it does, right? Like, because Arsenal clearly are going to make him the centerpiece of their attack, and therefore he has to produce, probably 15 league goals. I would say, as a minimum. Also, you just look at his age profile, and it doesn't feel like one where, if he has a bit of a slow first 18 months and then picks up in a year and a half, then it's all good, because that's not really the point. He's a bit of a win now signing. But equally, I don't think that the fact Arsenal now have this striker should take away from what Adrian actually just said a few minutes ago, which was Arsenal's other forwards didn't play well yesterday. Arsenal don't just need more from their centre forwards. They need more from Martinelli. Wasn't good enough last season, for example. Saka, I thought yesterday was poor by his standards. I wonder with Saka at times whether, I think he's an amazing player, but unbelievable player. But can he have a season like a Mo Salah season? Can he take his game and his output to that level? He may not be able to. He may just be a different player that, I was going to say he creates more, but Salah creates so much as well that actually he does all of it. But that's why Arsenal need a centre forward that scores goals, because unlike Liverpool, they don't have those wide forwards over the years that score they score goals, but not the level of goals. But I really do think with all the discussion about Gyökeres, that there has to be a focus as well on Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli. They all need to score more goals. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a situation where you just fall short.
What about United for Šeško? Because there's an argument that you've got Højlund there, who actually, with the right service, could actually be a better player. I'm no tactician, but you sort of feel that Šeško potentially, I mean, I haven't seen him in the Premier League other than yesterday, could take a bit of time to settle in.
Well, Højlund won't be there for long, but by the looks of it, he wasn't in the squad yesterday. They're doing their best to get him out. I think he will eventually come to the realization that he probably has to leave in this window. I think it's getting a little bit unpleasant, to be honest. He's someone who's, I think, for all the limitations and difficulties he's had, that he's never been one that you could throw accusations at in terms of attitude or character. It's just not worked for him, probably because he was brought in far too young for too much money and too much expectation on him. Šeško, I can't say that I've seen enough of him, playing in Germany, that I can sit here and say he's this, he's that, and everything. I think with him, because you look at his goals record in Germany, they're not at the level that it was with Gyökeres, where he's scoring 40 odd a season in Portugal. With Šeško, it was like 12, 13 last season in the league. I think what's more important is actually his role in the system at United, where they need a centre forward who fully understands what Amorim wants from a centre forward. And I think if you're getting the goals from Mbeumo and Cunha and Fernandes as well, then okay, it doesn't really matter to quite the same level. But also his age, he's a lot younger. So actually, if he has a first season where he scores 12 league goals and shows signs of promise, that's absolutely fine. Manchester United aren't going to win the league. If they finish 5th, that's great. If he comes in and scores 3 goals and Man United finish 12th, that is a problem. So I think the expectation is fairly or unfairly different for Gyökeres and Šeško, just based on age.
Yeah, do you buy that, Adrian, in terms of Gyökeres' role at Arsenal? It's more about, as well, those attacking players stepping up this season to help him out.
Yeah, of course, yeah. They need to. Odegaard has had a season where he scored, I think, 15 goals. Saka, the same. Martinelli has as well. But what Arsenal need is for them all to sort of pull that together in one campaign, don't they? Not enough goals, really, from those guys last season. That's why Arsenal are in the market for a left-sided player, because they need more goals elsewhere. It can't just be on Gyökeres' shoulders. Isn't it funny? I mean, I think all the strikers will do absolutely fine, but the one striker that was sort of head and shoulders above the others this weekend was Ekitike. Brilliant individual performance, I thought, against Bournemouth. Yeah, he's the one that will probably be demoted when Liverpool sign Isak, or if Liverpool sign Isak. So, yeah, it's funny in a way.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Arsenal signings, the big ones anyway, Gyökeres, Zubimendi, Adam, compared to Mbeumo, I should say, and Matheus Cunha. Cunha and Mbeumo have played in the Premier League now, and I feel like they've got those street smarts down. Was that evident yesterday in comparison to maybe Gyökeres and Zubimendi?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Cunha was probably Man United's best player. I saw a lot of him in Wolves games last season. He's an unbelievable player. It was just a question of how he fits in and how he works with Fernandes being that bit deeper, because I still think Fernandes is probably at his best as a 10 rather than as one of those two in midfield. Although yesterday I was surprised actually that Casemiro and Fernandes lived with the Arsenal midfield yesterday. On paper, that was one of those things you looked at on paper and thought that's going to be a problem. Yeah, of course. I think actually this season as a whole, across the Premier League, across those big teams, we are seeing a kind of a bit more of a pivot towards signing Premier League proven players again. Tottenham signed Kudus and went after Gibbs-White. Obviously, Man United have done Mbeumo and Cunha. Chelsea have done João Pedro and Delap. Liverpool obviously going for Isaac. And it feels like a bit of a pivot away from what we've seen the past few years, which has always been, Man United just taking, let's go and sign a load of players from Holland, or let's go and sign players from different markets and try and get them into the Premier League. I think what clubs are sensing now is actually you go and sign from the team the rung below you in the Premier League. So Tottenham will take from West Ham, or, well, maybe not in terms of position finishes last season at least, but in the general sense of budget, Chelsea we see constantly signing from Brighton, Newcastle signing from Nottingham Forest and Elanga. And I think it's because the Premier League is, we've said this before in this podcast, the Premier League is the Super League, right? It is the best product if you take the kind of level across the 20 teams. And that's why the top 6 teams are now thinking, well, we're more sure of making good signings by signing from there.
Yeah, on that, I think it's absolutely true in terms of wanting players that are hungry on the way up, rather than the players that have maybe come from a Real Madrid that are on the way down. They're actually just disappointed to have left there. I think there is something in that. And that's one of the reasons why I would favour Arsenal going for someone like Eze rather than Rodrigo, even though Rodrigo's a fantastic talent. I'd absolutely take him at Arsenal if they were to able to get him. But I would prefer Eze because I think Eze's still got that fire in his belly to prove that he can do it at a Champions League club, that he can revel in that environment. Whereas if you get from above you, then are you looking at a demoralised player, a player that's maybe thinking, oh, this isn't as good as it used to be. So I think that is just something for all of these teams to consider.
Okay, well, let's move on because I really want to analyse Mikel Arteta's role in this, in trying to get Arsenal over the line. Adrian, he's had to have evolved. He's got older anyway, and so have those players around him. But from where you're sitting, how do you think the Mikel Arteta that started at Arsenal all those years ago to the guy we see now has evolved as a person and a manager?
Oh, greatly. I mean, first and foremost, just look at his demeanour on the side of the touchline. I mean, people used to slate him for being sort of manic and whatnot. He's much calmer now. He's learned on the job. It was a massive risk for Arsenal to go for Arteta in the first place. And year on year, he's just picked up more knowledge. He's now got a base of like, when this happens, this is what worked before. I remember this game where this wasn't going well. I changed it to that. He didn't have that at the outset. So he should be getting better and better. Style of the team has changed, obviously. Often it depends on the players that you bring in. The style will evolve. And I think this season we're set to see quite a big shift in Arteta's evolution as a tactician because of Gyökeres, because it's such a different stylistic striker. And also I think because he's looked at Liverpool. I mean, why wouldn't you look at Liverpool if you're Mikel Arteta and think, how can we get better? Oh, let's look at the team that actually won the league last year. What do they do better than us? They score loads of goals from breakaways. They go from back to front unbelievably well. Can we do a bit more of that? And I think that is probably the next step for Arsenal. They're just learning it at the moment. There were some good moments yesterday in the game at Old Trafford where they sliced through Man United on the break. The execution was really bad. That's got to get better. And once it does, they'll look a different team.
Yeah, the ultimate evolution would be winning the Premier League, Adam. That's 3
second
place, finishes in a row. Adrian says, he's just right. He hadn't managed a team before up until now, really. Can we look at his evolution as a success? Because Arsenal haven't won the Premier League in 20 odd years.
I remember interviewing Arteta when he was at Man City. Working as an assistant to Pep, and at that time there was always this kind of people at City at the time were very excited about him, in terms of the role he was playing. I think I'm trying to remember what the years he was there. It was maybe 2017, 18, around the time City became the Centurions and took 100 points. Maybe it was the year before. It was around those years, and. At that time, I remember going and thinking, he's another Spanish coach. He'll sound a lot like Pep. He'll want to play like Pep. He's working with Pep. And actually, what I remember coming away thinking was actually how much he spoke about playing at Rangers as a young kid, I think he was on loan from PSG at the time, playing at Everton, an appreciation not just of this kind of Barcelona style that he'd grown up with in an academy, but also actually kind of the kind of foundations of British football that is really been in him for really quite a long time now. And he had those kind of two appreciations simultaneously. And it made me really interesting to see when he had his own team, what he was going to try and make them be. And really at times, I do look at Arsenal and I see like elements of a David Moyes team. And I mean that as a compliment, because I think Moyes is a really good coach, and elements of Pep. And that for the first few years, that was what I saw. Now, when I think of what team are Arsenal most like, I think they're quite unique. And I think that's a good thing. I think there's elements of lots of different other teams in there. And I also know there's also quite a few Premier League teams who, I know for all the talk about Arsenal set pieces, who have studied the way Arsenal play and studied the way Arsenal do set pieces and almost made it like the foundations of their own workings as well. So that shows, that Arteta has had an impact kind of on football itself. Of course, right? Like the thing that we'll always end the conversation is, and now he needs to go and win it, right? And of course he does, because, but I don't think anyone can look at what Arsenal have done for the last 6-7 years and say it's not been a huge success relative to where Arsenal were before that, which was directionless, wasteful, a very split fan base. I think. Don't get me wrong. I think the fans still have their moments, where they will have disagreements. But I think that there is a stability around the club and a sense of purpose and a sense of ambition that had been teetering for quite a long time before that.
It's a lot of pressure, Adrian, if you think about it, trying to bring glory back to Arsenal after all these years to win the Premier League. How do you think Mikel Arteta wears that pressure, and how do you think he manages that pressure when it comes to the team? Because it feels like every year, everyone else bolsters their ranks as well. It gets harder and harder to get it over the line.
Yeah, it's not easy competing against. Look at what Liverpool spent this summer. Look at Man City's squad. Look at what Chelsea are spending. It's not a gimme, is it, winning the Premier League title? Look, pressure, I think, is not an issue for Mikel Arteta. He's grown up as a player, playing for Arsenal. He's played in some pretty good Arsenal teams. He's played in some dreadful Arsenal teams. But he's worn the badge. He knows what it feels like. He's played for, playing for Rangers brings great pressure. And you've got to embrace it. If you're a manager of a big club, you've got to gobble up pressure and just use it in a positive way, haven't you? I think he's a family man. I think he does switch off. He's got teenage kids. I think one's Max Dowman's age. He spoke about that with Amy. I think he does a pretty good job actually of being intense with the players and getting them to constantly evolve, but without letting it ruin his life. But the pressure is on. I think the pressure for this season with Arteta is not necessarily around his job. I think it's around, I really need to prove to the players that we can win, that we can climb the mountain together. Like, for them to keep believing me as a manager, we need some tangible success. We need to get our hands on a trophy. Otherwise, will one or two players start thinking, it's not going to happen, is it? And then they'll start to look around elsewhere, and that is when there could be an issue in the dressing room. That dressing room is completely with Arteta, completely. But if at the end of this season Arsenal haven't won a trophy again, it could change.
Yeah. I think it's a big 4 or 5 weeks as well. Even before the end of September, Arsenal have games that are really some of their hardest games of the season. Liverpool away, Newcastle away, Man City at home, and I think everyone's done a bit of a recalibration on Man City after Saturday, where you're like, oh my God, they're good again.
We wrote them off and we're like, oh God.
Right. Okay. I'm sure we have lots of listeners who were completely across AC Milan in Serie A, but I had a lot of WhatsApp messages being, my God, I knew Reinders was good. I didn't think he was this good. It wasn't meant to be this good. It looks like Kevin De Bruyne. So So I think there is a bit of that. And, Liverpool away, I think, will be a fascinating game, because if you look at the way Liverpool played on Friday, which was a lot more open than Arsenal, I think, are wanting to be. Yeah. Someone said to me yesterday, Arsenal might have been happy, they soaked up pressure and they came away with a win. I was like, there is no way Arsenal wanted to have 20 odd shots against them in that game and have so much space on the break against them. And for all the talk, by the way, about, I think, we're saying Arsenal didn't play well. We don't give United credit. When teams don't play well, it is also sometimes because the team they're playing against is doing things that unnerves them in some way. Now, of course, Arsenal should still be passing to each other better than they were yesterday as well. But those few, even Newcastle away is such a tough game over the last couple of years. It comes with kind of bruises and scars for Arsenal. And, if they were to get to that point, having had a couple of iffy results against Liverpool and Man City, and then you've got Champions League starts to roll in, and you don't have that much time on the training ground to really work on things. So there's a lot of jeopardy, I think, over the next month. And if they can come through, the next 5 games with 10 points out of that, or 11 points out of that, I think Arteta will be thrilled.
We've got to wrap things up, but before we go, Adam, I've got to give you the final word. A new segment we're adding to the Monday podcast, at least. And this is it. You've got a minute to tell us who your biggest winners, losers, or maybe both from the last week of football are. When you hear the referee's whistle, you've got to stop talking. We still haven't thought of a name for it. It'll come. But are you ready?
So my pick of the weekend, who is also, he lost the game on Friday night playing for Bournemouth, but David Brooks, who produced a fantastic assist for Semenyo's first goal. We've actually got an interview with him running this week on The Athletics. This is a plug as well as winners or losers. But he had the most sprints out of any player in the Premier League this weekend. And if you read this interview talking about the journey he had coming back from cancer, recovering from cancer, the battle not just to get well, but to get fit again, for him to be doing the most sprints in a Premier League weekend, I thought was extraordinary.
Fantastic. I don't even know what that was, but you finished that in lovely time. I mean, very good, very good. Also used it for a plug as well. Very smart indeed. Yeah. All right, let's leave it there. Adam, Adrian, thank you so much for your time. And also thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like the video and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And also leave us a cheeky comment as well with your thoughts. That's it for now. We're back soon. For more from the Athletic FC podcast, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We've got top journalists like David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the entire season. Make sure you don't miss an episode of the Athletic FC. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts from.